Well, hello there. I didn't see you come in. Make yourself at home. Have a drink. While I give some attention to some underappreciated characters and storylines that I personally love. And I hope you grow to love as well. Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Hellblazer podcast, where I, Matt Hansen, go through every issue of the series Hellblazer, the original 300 issues from Vertigo and DC Comics. And this is the free version of the podcast. We have a Patreon where we are about 30 episodes ahead. So if you can't get enough of John Constantine the Hellblazer, then go check us out at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. And you can sign up for our Hellblazer tier, which will give you access to all the episodes of the Hellblazer podcast. And we will always be about 30 issues ahead of wherever we're at in this free one. So, like I said, if you need more Hellblazer in your life, definitely go check that out. Once again, you can find that at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. And with that, let's get into the podcast. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Matt's Minis Hellblazer. Today, we are reading number 5 of Hellblazer. And it is once again by Jamie Delano and John Ridgway on the art. And just a warning, this one definitely has a lot of war trauma and also a bit of triggering language of the racist variety from some of the characters in this one. It's part of the story, but just in case anyone is offended by that kind of stuff. But first things first, we got the cover here. We can see there's like helicopters and a setting sun and a bunch of soldiers. And that kind of fades into the, it looks like someone's struggling on the left side of the comic, like they're fighting someone off. And then we see someone's eyes peering through both of those images. And we see here on the first page that we start off in August 10th, 1968 in Vietnam. And we are introduced to a bunch of soldiers that are walking around the jungle. One in specific is named Lieutenant Frank Ross. And he is just talking about how much it sucks being in the jungle, and but how much he loves the Marine Corps. And this is where I was saying they say some kind of racist language towards Vietnamese people. And then we cut to August 10th, 1987, so exactly 19 years after what we just saw in Vietnam. And we are in the town of Liberty, Iowa. And all the soldiers that we just saw are actually from the town of Liberty, Iowa. They are the children of these older people that now live in this small town that apparently has had a hard go of it in the last couple of years. It says that like a highway opened up and has dried up all the business in town. And it used to be like a place that people would go through, but ever since their kids left and then that interstate opened, no one comes through here. It's kind of like a dead town. But tonight, something special is supposed to happen. There's an old man, and he's putting up a banner that says, "Liberty welcomes home her boys." Now, they're hanging this sign because all the soldiers that were from this town, they all went MIA, missing in action, and their parents, who are the only people left in this town, they never got over it. They've always wanted to find the kids or have their kids come home from war. So it seems like they're preparing for something today, like they know something's going to happen. And the reason they think something's going to happen is because they have all become recent converts to the Resurrection Crusade Church. So if you remember in the last issue, Constantine's sister and brother-in-law had lost their niece, but they were part of that church, the Resurrection Crusade. And they had kind of their first run-in with Constantine as they were like calling him like a witch and all this stuff. So this town apparently has also been found from them, and something's supposed to happen tonight because of their belief in this church. They've been praying, and they know that according to what the Resurrection Crusade has told them, they have been moved up to the top of the pyramid, and that means that God will answer their prayers to bring home their boys. They're finally coming home from war. And one of the old men in this town is hanging up a banner saying, "Liberty welcomes her boys coming home." And this guy hears a noise and in the corn. And he's like, "Wait, what's that?" And he's like, "Son, is that you?" Because his hopes are so, high, and his beliefs are so strong that he actually thinks his son is coming home. from Vietnam, like 20 years after he's gone missing in action. So he walks into the cornfield and begins pushing, the stalks with his hands to make a path for himself. And just as he gets past like the street view, so like people can't see him anymore, he walks into a clearing and it's a Vietnam village and it's 1968 and he gets shot by an American trooper. And in the background, we could see that there's a village that looks like, it's a Vietnamese village that's getting bombed and napalmed by a bunch of planes. And we can see the rest of this guy's unit walking up behind him. And we see the name of this issue is called When Johnny Comes Marching Home. It is written by Jamie Delano, and the art is by John Ridgway. Then we cut to the view of, like, the soldier who just shot the man. And it seems like there's some kind of temporal time wormhole or something going on, because we are literally in 1968 now, where these soldiers are seeing Vietnamese people, even though they just shot an American old guy that was probably one of the dads of these soldiers. But when they go to see this man that he shot, they turn him over and it's a Vietnamese farmer. So something's going on with time. We see as they approach the man, the guy that was like taking the point and who shot him is like, I don't think this is Charlie, but the commanding officer is like, it doesn't matter. It's just a Vietnamese guy. Who cares? And so these guys are not, at least the commanding officer and all of these guys don't seem to be very nice. And they're definitely racist. They're definitely saying some very racist words for Vietnamese people. And the commander even says, like, nice shooting, Anders. Like, chalk it up for another one of the boys from Liberty. So these actually are the soldiers from the missing unit that the old people 19 years later are praying to come back. So it's a very, like I said, I think something's going on with time and wormholes and stuff. So we see the guy that shot the old man. His name was Anders. He's like, I don't understand. And this commanding officer's like, what's wrong? You look like you seen a ghost or something. And he's like, well, for a second, I thought that guy looked just like my pops. And his commanding officer says, nah, you've just been smoking that louse grass again. So you need to get a grip, because that's no American. So the unit then proceeds to march away. And then we cut to a man in the present day, which is 1986. And we're at a gas station, it looks like. And there's a man at the counter behind the gas station. He is drinking. His name is Frank Ross. And he is the only man out of that unit that went missing in 1968 who came back to town. He has major PTSD. He feels super guilty that he's the only one who ever came back. And all this talk about the boys coming back and all this stuff is making him have flashbacks and kind of relive everything. And so he's drinking heavily, and he's actually starts remembering something bad that happened to Vietnam, where he's got a gun pointed at a Vietnamese woman. And then we see on the outside, a bus stops. And who gets off but our buddy John Constantine. And in his narration, we find out that he's in America just for a quick visit to check up on the Swamp Thing. And he had read in the Inquirer about the Resurrection Crusade in America, and specifically in this town of Liberty, where the people refused to give up hope for their MIA sons. And so he figured while he's here, he might as well check it out, because it's 19 years ago today, and there's something supposed to be happening, and it's a coincidence that he's here at the same time, and he doesn't believe in coincidence. So the bus leaves him here at the gas station. I guess this is where it's going to drop him off in the town, and he's like, if I'm going to walk, I'm going to need a drink. So he goes into, I guess, the convenience store part of the gas station, and as he comes in, Frank, who's still having his flashback of Vietnam, freaks out as he comes in, and he pulls a gun as Constantine's like, hey, any chance of a cold beer? And Frank starts shooting at him, and it literally puts the gun in his mouth, and he goes, well, actually, I can't say what he says, but basically he's yelling at the Vietnamese woman. I guess he's seeing John as the Vietnamese woman, and the way they drew the panel, if you like overlaid the two images like the Vietnamese woman from before and John Constantine's face. They have the very same like expression on their face. So, and then out of the back, I guess someone yells, "Frank, don't!" And he's like, "Nancy," and it's his wife, Nancy, and she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you shooting this guy?" And John's like, "What the hell?" Because he doesn't like guns, and just in general, he's like, "Yeah, I don't do guns." So he gets freaked out, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go." So as he's walking outside, we see Nancy follow him, and she's like, "Look, I'm really sorry, mister. Frank was wounded in war. You know, he got a Purple Heart, but he came home a bit crazy." And she's like, "What's your problem anyway? Like, is your car broke down?" And he's like, and I'm not sure if this is actually what happened or if this is just part of his ruse for why he is here. But he says that it's a bit silly, but he got off the bus to take a pee and they left without him. So he's like, "Oh, can I stay here for the night? I don't want to like hitchhike at night." So she's going to give him a ride to a motel, and she starts telling him about what's going on. She says, "Yeah, it's so strange, but right now folks are a bit weird. They all lost their kin in war, missing in action, and now this TV preacher says he's going to pray and bring them back. So it's got them all psyched up like a football coach," she says. And the main important thing is that she doesn't believe that it's going to happen. She says it's going to break Ma's heart when nothing happens. So she doesn't believe in any of this religious stuff, but all the old people are not willing to give up their children. So they get to the motel. Nancy goes in to let her mom know, like, "Hey, this guy's staying here." And Constantine overhears the conversation behind him where the mom is saying, like, "We're at the top of the pyramid tonight, and your brother's coming home. Craig will be here in the morning. You'll see, girl." And Nancy's like, "Please, Ma, like, you know this sounds ridiculous, right? Like, they're gone. They're not coming back." And the mom fucking slaps her in the face, and it's like, "Shut your lying face, you traitor slut." Like, she goes all crazy on her daughter. And she even says, "Frank Ross came home." So, like, it's like the mom resents the fact that Nancy married the only boy who came home from the war. And so it's just super fucked up. And then we cut to, it's like a interposed scene of Frank Ross in Vietnam and then Frank Ross waking up at night. They're kind of crossing over because he is, I guess the psychic energy in this town is forcing his PTSD to get worse and for him to have these flashbacks. And basically he starts believing he's in Vietnam when he wakes up. So he's like, it's time to end it. He knows without a shadow of a doubt that his boys are out there waiting for him. So he puts on his old combat fatigues and he goes for a walk. So it shows him putting on not actually his fatigues, but he puts on basically like the gun belt and the like rucksack, I guess maybe, and he also gets his AR-15. And like I said, he thinks he's in Vietnam. So there's like a panel of him in Vietnam when he's all young, and it says, "Just ahead, the unit waits for him to lead the assault on the suspect hamlet." So in Vietnam, he was supposed to lead this team into a town in Vietnam, but now he's delusionally thinking that he's going to lead his boys into town, but it's 1986 and he's by himself and he's walking through the corn like it's the jungle. And he actually does meet up with his unit, but like I said, he's seeing Vietnam, and he tells his unit, like, "Hey, there's a town here," and he's asking Anders, the man who in the beginning of the comic shot the old man in the corn, which was his actual dad, and he's like, "What's the status, Anders?" And Anders is like, "Just another crummy bunch of huts. Seems like a quiet town full of old folks. No sign of Charlie." And Frank is like, "Well, okay, we're gonna search and shoot up the place a bit and round them all up. And if any of them try to run away, shoot them because they must have a guilty conscience." So his unit starts moving into the town, and we see it's not the Vietnamese town anymore. It's the town of Liberty. So we cut to, I guess it's the house where the mother of that owns the motel where Constantine is staying at is, and she has all the parents of these boys in her living room watching the TV program that is the televangelist from the Resurrection Crusades. They are saying, Lord, hear us as we cry to thee. Brothers and sisters of the Resurrection Crusade, love the Lord and he'll love you. Tonight we thrust Liberty, Iowa before the eye of the Almighty. These worthy crusaders have paid their dues. Have you? On this day, 19 years ago, their sons were snatched by the satanic hands of communism. Deliver them! And so basically these old people are waiting and praying while he's talking, and they're saying, please just bring our boys back. And Constantine's talking to Nancy about this because he's like weirded out. And he's like, I'm just a simple English boy. What's going on? And Nancy's like, it's the pyramid of prayer. You got to pay $10 a month and your prayer goes into the computer. And then you have to do all these chain letter subscriptions and scripture mailings. And eventually you will get up and up in the pyramid and your prayer moves to the top of the pyramid. Then it gets on Coast to Coast TV. So the idea is once that happens, they'll have a program like this where they tell everybody in the Resurrection Crusade and anybody who's watching the TV, who's a Christian, I guess, would pray all at once. And then that like giant mass of prayers will make a miracle happen. And so as they're talking, as Constantine and Nancy are talking, the old people are like, look, they're here. It's the boys. Praise the Lord. And Constantine looks out the window and he's like, uh-oh. Talk about raising the dead. And we see the soldiers move into the town. They break into the house and start shooting the lights. And Constantine's like, well, I'm off. He's such a coward. He's like, I'm not even going to try to save any of these old people or anything. Like I said, he really doesn't like guns. So he just books it. And we see what Ross and his unit are seeing, but mainly Frank Ross. He's seeing just a regular Vietnamese town. He's rounding up the people. He's narrating and saying that, his men blast them out of their hovels. There's no resistance. The soldiers round up these sullen people of this town and fire the huts. So they start burning the town down. But in this version, it's just the huts of the Vietnamese people. And he's like, as their homes burn, they show no emotion. And Frank is saying, like, these bastards ain't human. And then it says, then one, a male, young enough to fight, breaks free from the fire. And he's like, you're Charlie, you're dead meat. And as he's about to shoot, some woman grabs his barrel. And he looks and he sees a Vietnamese woman, specifically the one he had a flashback of before. So basically, Ross is having this flashback, and the man who ran away, that's Constantine running out of this room. And the woman who grabbed his barrel is his wife, Nancy. But he's not seeing reality right now. So he's seeing Vietnam. The woman who grabbed the barrel isn't Nancy, it's the Vietnamese lady. And so he says, there aren't no civilians in this war. And it says, Ross looks at the girl. Why is she jabbering at him? He can't understand her. Nothing about her is familiar except her sex. Calmly, he slaps her across the face, reassured by the sight of her blood. Her expression is unreadable. A hard, cold anger of incomprehension stirs inside of him. He is slipping into another world. Then we cut to actual reality in Liberty, and we kind of go back in time like 5 seconds, and we see he actually did shoot the gun at Constantine. So there's 2 shots go off. Nancy grabs the barrel, and then he slaps Nancy. And then we see them start to round up the old people, and the old people are like, but you're our children, and let her go. What are you doing? And one of the ladies is like, please, Craig, I'm your mother. So she's pleading with her son, Craig, the ghost version of her son, Craig. And Frank, who's the only one with an actual gun here. I don't know if, obviously, the ghost people killed that old man at the beginning, so maybe they have supernatural guns or whatever. But the person who's got a real gun here is Frank, and he has Nancy by the hair, and he looks over and he sees this woman who he sees as a Vietnamese person talking to Craig, and he just shoots her. So Craig's like, "Geez, Lieutenant, why'd you have to do that?" And Frank says, "I thought you had a hand grenade. Goddamn blather, you can't understand him." And then the old people are like, "But we brought you back. We prayed for you." And Frank's like, "Move him out, Anders, and leave me the radio. I'll catch up to you." So he's telling his unit to leave, and he's like, "There's something I gotta do." And like I said, he still has his wife Nancy by the hair, and it says, "Suddenly, exultant in the blazing night, scales peel from his eyes. Lieutenant, he communes with the gods of war. He has found some lost wild part of himself, caged by history, which now bends its bars and stretches its raw and bloody frame. The darkness isn't frightening once you surrender to it. In hell, after all, you should expect to find demons." It says, "The woman fights hard but hopelessly. The darkness is undeniable. It's a passion that must be spent." So we see he's fighting this woman. He's grabbing at her. He forces himself on her and rapes this woman who he's seeing as the Vietnamese woman. And I'm almost 100% sure that he's reliving what actually happened to him in Vietnam with like his unit and all that stuff. So then we cut to Constantine. He is in the corn, like peering out, just looking through the stalks, and he proceeds to watch Frank rape his wife, and he's just like narrating over the whole thing. And he says, "You should do something, Constantine, but there's nothing to be done. I'm shut out of this thing. No way I can go charging into their movie. It's too bloody dangerous." So he just kind of closes the corn stalks and stops watching. And then we hear Nancy say, you ain't a man, you're an animal," to Frank. And then there's a crash of lightning and thunder, and we see Ross is still in his Vietnam flashback, and he is on the ground, and he sees the LZ, the landing zone, where his unit head off without him because he told them, like, "Hey, wait, I'm going to wait behind. I got something to do." That's when he raped the Vietnamese woman. And so they went to the landing zone to get picked up. But then he sees it's full of Charlie. So there's a firefight going there, and he decides to get on his radio and start calling for napalm. And this was like a cool narration. It says, "The words are a spell to summon fire from the sky. American magic. As he waits for the gasoline flowers to blossom, a shadow falls across Frank Ross." So then in the panels, we see he makes that call for the napalm, and then he's kind of waiting for the planes. And then we see a hand reach into, I guess, his like vest area where there was a gun on his chest, and it's the Vietnamese woman who he raped pulling a gun on him. But what it actually is Nancy reaching into his shoulder holster and grabbing his gun, and they start talking to each other. And Constantine once again kind of spreads the corn reeds again to see what's going on. And she's like, "I've got to kill you, Frank. I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to do it." And he's not hearing English at all. He's hearing Vietnamese, and he says, "Don't talk that gibberish to me, you slut." And she's like, "It's not for me, Frank. It's for Ma and Pa and Craig." And he's like, "You better shoot me, whore. You can't talk me to death." And so she shoots at him and shoots him in the leg, unfortunately. And he smacks that gun out of her hand. And he looks at her right in the face, puts the AR-15 to her head. And right at that time, Constantine's saying, "I should help her do the bastard, but I still can't move. At least that's what I tell myself." So he's just going to let these events unfold before him while he's watching through the corn. And then another lightning crash happens, and at the same time we hear da-da-da-da-da-da. And so Frank murders his wife, and Constantine just says, "Oh, Christ, Jesus, but for a couple of hours that could have been me. That's cutting the deck too close to the ace of spades." So he's not, he's like, this is fucked up, but he's kind of more worried about himself still than he was about Nancy's life. And then we cut to, I guess, the landing zone where all the firefighting was happening. And we cut to Craig Anders, who was the guy who shot his father, the old man at the beginning putting up the sign.
because he thought he was seeing a Vietnamese person. And it says, if I knew what happened in Vietnam, this wouldn't be such a bloody mess. Charlie was waiting for them. The freaking LZ is hotter than hell in a heat wave. Now, Craig Anders knows they're going to get their asses shot off. Frank Ross screwed them, dropped them right into the... And then a bomb goes off next to him, like an explosion. And he's like, damn it, where is Ross? And then he says, without the radio, they can't call for air support. Bastard lieutenant had gone weird on him. Anders should have seen it coming. He's known Ross a long time. They're hometown boys. Hell, Ross is even engaged to his sister, for Christ's sake. And now he's just watched him kill a geriatric civilian and rape an enemy prisoner. So then we cut back to Frank, who has just killed Nancy, who's the soldier who was just talking's sister. And he looks up and he's kind of like, what's going on? And he says he looks up into a desolate sky and finds himself alone in the empty heart of America. It says he is lost and blood drips from his fingers. He finds his wife and he's like, Nancy? But her face is a mask, concealing the unspeakable terror of the void. And he throws up, and then he's like, it's happening again. The unit had come back and gone again without him. He still lives while the war devours everything around. Guilt and despair wrench sobs like deformed children from his belly. Not for him, the fire and the pain. His hell is here on earth. And he yells, why didn't you take me too? And then Constantine comes out and finally does something. He comes out of the corn and he says in like a military bark that, it's no good bawling about it, soldier. You better shape up. You're an officer. And then it says, the drill sergeant's tone whips his mind to order. And then Constantine continues, pick up that weapon and get with your unit. You're a Marine. You've got to fight if you want to die. So Ross picks up his weapon and he begins to march through the corn. Constantine follows him slowly, and he gets to like where there was a billboard sign. So he climbs up the stairs to the billboard, and he's watching what Frank is doing, and he sees Frank's unit, who has all the old people from the town in like a line with their hands behind their backs, and they're kneeling on the ground, and it looks like they're either holding them prisoner for the landing zone to come pick them up, or they're about to shoot them. And I think they're just holding him as prisoner because, at least in the flashback, they were just waiting for the helicopters to come pick him up the landing zone. So it seems like they're just holding the old people there. But Frank comes out and he sees a truck coming and he starts shooting at it. And he's like, hup, 2, 3, 4, I love the Marine Corps. And this is kind of tied at the same moment as the napalm is dropped in the Vietnam flashback. The truck that he was shooting at is a gas tanker, and it flips over and it bursts into flames. So that fire is timed with the bombs dropping from the napalm planes. And Constantine narrates, poor old sods never had a chance. It was an accident waiting to happen, a hammer waiting to drop, something to do with the place, the people, the bitterness and blind faith, with a shot of guilt just for a catalyst. A cancer that had been growing for a long time, just waiting for the Resurrection Crusade to kick it awake, split the temporal fabric at the tension point or something. How the hell should I know? The one thing is for sure, I've got to get on those Crusaders' case soon. Vietnam America drowns in fire. Before, I'd only seen war. Now I know how it smells, and it smells of gasoline. So Constantine gets the fuck out of that town now, and he ends up hitchhiking to Nebraska. And as he's walking, he sees like a gun shop, and then he sees a video rental store where it says films that show how it really was on the window. And you see Platoon and Hamburger Hill and Full Metal Jacket posters. And he walks by a family that has just gone food shopping, and they're putting the groceries in the hatch of their car. And he sees the gentleman is actually a war veteran who is in a wheelchair, doesn't have any arms. And Constantine narrates, then I see the guy by the car, catch the pain and fear in his eyes as his wife fusses the kids and the shopping inside. He wants to help her. He could tell them. I flash a peace sign, then feel stupid because there's no way he can return it because he flashes the peace sign at the armless man. then I turn my back and walk away. So now Constantine is on a mission to fully figure out what the fuck is going on with these Resurrection Crusaders. They're affecting people in America, not just in England. And this is maybe a bigger problem than Constantine thought originally. So that is the end of the issue. And if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at planestrains and comic books, all one word, at gmail.com. And we will see you guys on the next one.